fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life. Story 1. Guy from my school went to rob a corner shop at knife point. He pulled up with his push bike, went into the store, and threatened the shopkeeper with a knife to give him all the money in the register. The shopkeeper refused, and the robber was too to do anything, so he grabbed a pack of gum and ran out. 20 minutes later, the robber realized he left his bike behind in his panic, so he went back to get it. This was at the same time the police were questioning the shopkeeper on the incident. They swiftly arrested him there, and then think he got 2 years for stealing gum at knife point. Story 2. Kid I went to high school with used to break into homes in his neighborhood to steal phones with his younger brother. They always did seem to have a couple of screws loose, but never thought they were capable of hurting anyone. Then one night, they robbed the wrong house. As they were sneaking into the kitchen, the owner of the house came in for a late-night glass of water and caught them in the act. Unlucky for them, he also was a former Marine. They got into it, but one of the kids had a knife and started repeatedly stabbing the dude in the head. They ran off after that, but the next day, they were arrested. One is still in juvie 5 years later. The other was sentenced to 30 years in state prison. Ed, owner of the house, is apparently still alive, but suffers from a lot of mental issues now. Story 3. Couple guys in my hometown were looking for something to steal so they could sell it to buy drugs. They come to a house where no one was supposed to be home, and one guy gets out of the car and goes to the house to steal a grill. A friend of the homeowner happened to be there and came out when he stepped onto the porch. He tells the friend that he is looking for his dog, so the guy walks out into the yard to help look for it. The would-be robber panics and pulls out a gun and shoots the man in the back of the head. At 21, he started a life sentence for a really stupid murder. Story 4. My half-brother decided it was a good idea to try and rob the restaurant he worked at. Didn't wear a mask or try to hide his voice in any way at the time. He was hopelessly addicted to crack, so he obviously wasn't thinking straight when he convinced his dealer's GF to help him out. She secured a gun for him, and he was dumb enough or desperate enough not to check it and didn't realize it was a BB gun. They did manage to get out of the restaurant with $7,000, but the dealer and his very large friend were waiting for them when they came out. They beat the out of him, took the money, and left him unconscious for the police. He got 7 years in prison for armed robbery and grand larceny. He did manage to kick his drug habit in prison, though. Story 5. A few years back, one of the students attending the university I work at got caught trying to sneak a shitload of drugs into a local nightclub. The first we found out about it was when some police officers turned up with a warrant to go through his room, and I was the lucky person chosen to go let them in. So I opened the door, and oh dear Lord, there's drugs everywhere. If you've ever seen one of those old-timey pick-and-mix shops with all the sweets in big glass jars, imagine that, but with pills and wraps of powder instead. Everything else was all super neat and tidy, and it was one of the cleanest student rooms I'd ever been in. Just that every flat surface had a container full of drugs or some other sort of paraphernalia on it. This student was in his 4th year of a master's degree, and due to finish in 3 months. He ended up being charged with possession with intent to supply, and since a lot of the stuff he had in there was Class A, is now going to be in prison for a decade or two. He was also expelled, of course, and will still be on the hook for $60K of student debt afterwards. Story 6. Cheated on his wife and got caught exchanging photos with fans, some of whom were underage, then blocked said wife on Twitter before announcing his divorce there. Story 7. One of my friends ordered crack from the dark web. Where I'm from, it's not something anybody ever really does. It's unheard of really anyway. Fast forward 6 months, and he's the most vile person you could ever meet. He dragged another friend down with him. He went from an engineer to stealing and backstabbing in about a month. Heartbreaking. Don't do crack. Story 8. Friend got married right after HS, left for boot camp and deployed soon after, gave his wife power of attorney. She destroyed his credit and put him $200K in debt in 8 months. They divorced, but his CEO advised him to just give her whatever she wants to keep her quiet. So now he's also paying alimony. It sucks because he only joined the military to pay for college, but now he's afraid he won't be able to afford it even with a GI Bill. Story 9. Crystal meth over 5 months. My long-ago neighbor had an Audi crotch rocket, beautiful, classy home furnishings, and a great job, only to end up with a folding chair and nothing else. Very sad to watch. He was a nice enough guy before the fall. Story 10. Honestly, meth. Have an aunt who went from being a full-time correctional officer and mom to having both of her kids taken away and now being a resident in the prison she worked at because of meth. Story 11. Huffing paint. My college buddy was an affable stoner type who liked psychedelics, weed, and drinking. He was broke, so he got into huffing paint over the summer. He passed out with a plastic bag full of spray paint over his face and ended up depriving his brain of oxygen and is now mentally disabled due to brain damage. Like drooling, slurring, can't tie his own shoes, or perform basic life tasks level disabled. Story 12 saw a guy slide down a stair rail and fall backwards 12 feet onto a concrete floor. Died at the hospital less than 24 hours later from college student to dust in less than a day. Pretty quick. Story 13, drunk driving. Guy crashed his car, ran from the scene, was tracked down, resisted arrest, assaulted a cop, blew way over, and in 2 hours went from kid to convict. Story 14, I saw a guy in the highway blow past me in a lifted truck doing about 120 to 130 miles per hour hit a concrete divider. He was being chased by a state trooper. If say, that was the fastest way I've seen someone ruin their life. Story 15, my sister and her husband started doing crack. Both lost their job. They lost their house, moved across the country with their kids who hated them for their big fuck-ups. Sister decides to get sober after getting a DUI. Husband kicks her out for it. She moves back with nothing but the clothes on her back and gets sober. Kids move out to be with her a year later. She gets her life in order and is now in the process of buying a house. Husband works, now, just to support a drug and alcohol habit while living in his mom's house. So, even though she ruined her life pretty bad for a while, she managed to get her back together. Story 16, in less than 5 years. One of my cousins was married twice to two equally horrible people and blew through 2 inheritances. He and his first wife trashed a house my grandmother let them live in for free and got mad when she asked him to pay for repairs. He is now completely alienated from family, including his parents, and disowned. Story 17, born-again Christian teen, met a druggie who got her into drugs, wound up pregnant, decided to get married as it was the right thing. Neither of them could hold down a job, and they had 6 more kids, decided to find God again, and move around doing ministry work while homeschooling their kids. Edit, the finding God was not a saving grace for them. It was the only way they could come up to care for their family. They are still doing drugs. Story 18, this kid at my school university just recently stole a pickup truck attached to a hot dog stand where everyone goes to for drunk food. Oh, yeah, he was drunk. He blew 18, and when asked why he did it, he said, because MA. Story 19, I once knew someone who swapped university courses midway through so that he could become a teacher in a subject he was more passionate about. We were pleased for him. He was really excited, and it all got off to a great start. He eventually completed his degree and qualified as a teacher in that subject. However, he is no longer a teacher. Why is that? Well, turns out he had with 2 underage students and verbally harassed them afterwards. There was a failed 3rd attempt. He then fled to Italy for some reason. He has no connection there as far as I know to escape justice. Eventually turned himself in and was arrested when he arrived back in the UK. Just shy of 3 years in prison, although he was paroled at around the halfway mark. 10 years on the UK offender register with a supplementary harm prevention order SHBO, which controls his interaction with young people, banned from teaching for life. Apparently that wasn't all. No idea what he was thinking or what he initially set out to achieve. Did he go into teaching so that he could do these things? Or did his mind somehow warp a bit later on? A few days ago in Britain, a radio DJ nuked his career in the space of few seconds by marking the birth of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's baby with a Twitter post, "Royal baby leaves hospital," accompanied with a picture of a monkey. Story 20, a friend of mine was 3 years from retirement at age 53 and decided to throw it away. He used to take the winter off and spend it with his family. He used to do hard drugs, and he decided to start shooting meth winter before last. He taught his 18-year-old son how to do drugs and run around with women. He didn't return to work and lied to his wife about them not being able to take him back at work. He texted me in the middle of the night that he would have hung himself by the time I woke up. He sent the same message to his brother, who called the police to do a welfare check, and they found meth. He is losing his beautiful house and is going to be living out of a camp trailer for now. He had everything going so well, and now he has to start over. Story 21, a friend in high school was popular, good-looking dude, could have been a model, really smart, got accepted to an Ivy League school, and all he had to do was make sure he passed all his classes, and he was in, well, the last week of senior year, he had a math exam, and all he had to do was just show up and write his name on the exam. The teacher had it set up where you get at least a 40 just by writing your name. He just couldn't get a 0, or else he wouldn't pass. They decided to skip his exam and go get high instead, failed the exam and the class, and couldn't attend the Ivy League school. He eventually spiraled over the years into drugs and dead-end jobs. It's been 15 years since high school, and last I heard he's still living at home. He could have went places in life, but decided to get stoned instead. Story 22, chief of anesthesia. 30-year marriage, kid, DeLorean in the driveway, secret bank account, hookers, meth, more hookers, bank account found, divorce, more hookers, teeth knocked out in strip club fight, felony meth conviction, lost job, lost license, lost the hookers, now parks cars at the airport. Story 23, an Indian guy I worked with at a tech company was there late one night. He asked the Latina cleaning lady that was there for the night cleaning if she'd like to go to a hotel with him, and then whipped his out directly under cameras in the upstairs area of the office. She called the police, and he was shipped back to India, losing his six-figure-a-year job. Story 24, kid from my old school robbed a betting shop with a machete for a measly $200. His face got caught on CCTV, and he was caught by feds later that day hiding in his own garden shed with the money and went straight to jail. LOL, what a weapon. Story 25, this happened to my brother. He's walking home, and his buddy pulls up in a new car and asks if he wants to go for a ride. He gets in, and they pull into the gas station, and the guy said he had to go in and pay. My brother is sitting there when multiple police cars pull in and surround the car, guns drawn. The friend had stolen the car and robbed the gas station and went out the back. Took 15 minutes. Took months to convince the police he was innocent. Story 26, I know a few people that have dropped out of school at ridiculously young ages. Some never even went to high school. All of them have jobs and are just generally miserable. As much of a meme as it is stay in school, you don't have to do anything extraordinary, just graduate with the bare minimum. It's so worth it in the long run. Story 27, this is a long and complicated story. But hey, race a short summary. This all happened in the span of about 6 months. A friend of a friend started dating a new lady immediately after his divorce. She was clearly more interested in his money than anything else, and was generally mean and an instigator of problems. But he didn't see that, regardless of how many times people warned him. They'd been dating for a bit, and because she had young children, they were older, her late 30s, him late 50s, and his lease was up soon, she convinced him that they needed to buy a house together. She got him to give her his portion of the down payment on the house in cash. He handed over $80K. Which was actually most of the total cost. Then she didn't put his name on anything because his credit wasn't as good as hers. She convinced him to buy all of the furniture, painting, flooring, and other stuff. Her excuse for that was claiming that she was going to pay for some remodeling and a new roof, which the house didn't need, but she lied about. She also convinced him to give her the money for all of those things in cash. When the house was nice and ready, he lived there for about 2 days before she dumped him. She said all this face to face. There's nothing in writing between them. There's no paper trail, there's no text messages, there's no witnesses. It just looks like she paid for the house, which is in her name. And that's the end of it. He has no recourse. Lost all of his savings, depression, a suicide attempt, which led to a lost job, had to move back in with his ex-wife. Story 28, my dad's coworker's brother was playing with a gun that he thought was empty. He pointed it at his friend's head and pulled the trigger, which killed him instantly. It wasn't empty, and he got about 10 years. Story 29, a guy I know decided one day he was going to rob someone. Now this guy has never owned a gun or anything and never really was into robbing people. He just sold weed. So he decides to get a gun and go rob someone. He didn't test the waters, nothing, just jumped right in. A few hours later he's arrested and his bail is set at $70,000. He's awaiting trial currently, but isn't getting out. Charges are robbery, first-degree possession of stolen property under 1,000, possession of illegal firearm, possession of marijuana with intent to sell. Way to go, dude. You up bad. Didn't even last a day on the run. Story 30, a dumb I knew from school still lived at home with his parents and kept dealing heroin from the house. Their house was directly in between a park and Catholic school and a few houses away from the police station. An undercover cop actually gave him a warning, saying they know everything he is doing and he better stop. He did not stop. So, a month later they arrested him. He got a mega-fuck 20-year sentence because he was X amount of feet from a school and a park. It was a first-time offense for him. He got 4 times the sentence they give to big-time ghetto drug dealers because the location of his parents' house. Story 31, my elementary school teacher and later my middle school principal, nicest guy ever, was caught pretending to be a student on Snapchat and asking hundreds of girls for nudes. The police believe that he had been doing it for years. He was a family friend and loved by many, had a wife and several kids. Now he is in jail for 25 years. It kind of makes me sick thinking back to it. Edit did some more research. He also tried to hook up with a middle school girl, and after refusal, he convinced her to try to kill herself. She is now in a mental hospital after multiple suicide attempts. Story 32, former high school teacher. He was a retired English teacher, former coach, former senior class advisor, confidant for students at risk. Wife was also a teacher, and both their kids went to our school and graduated. Turns out he was being investigated for child, I think, possession and distribution. Not sure about solicitation. He was in school talking to my freshman class in his wife's room about preparing for the future properly the last day of classes. 2 weeks later, we read on the news and papers that state police, sheriffs, and city police raided his house, and he killed himself in the woods out behind his house. He had laptops full of videos and pictures. It shook our town, to say the least. Luckily, The wife was retiring at the end of the year anyway, so she didn't have to live with the shame at the school. I felt so bad for her, though. She and the kids were investigated and knew nothing about it. People hide their demons, well, I guess. Story 33, I didn't see it, but my best friend growing up saw a mutual somewhat friend try and beat a train in their car at a RR crossing. No bueno. The winner was easy to predict. Life definitely was ruined in less than 30 seconds, including bad decision time, and left my best friend traumatized for quite a bit. He was on the other side of the tracks and recognized them, then saw their car hit. We walked the tracks several times to help him deal with it, I guess. Moral of the story, wait 5 to 20 minutes for the train to pass. Follow-up train story. A year or so later on my birthday, 2 carloads of friends and I were picking up some beer from a guy happy to buy it for minors, which we were headed to the drive-in for a fun night. I was a passenger in the lead truck. The driver, a moron, thought it would be funny to beat the train and ungated RR crossing a lot in the Midwest, his reasoning being later explained as well. Would have beat our friends to the drive-in by 10 minutes. He went so far off the road beating it. He put a 2-inch dent in the front rim of his truck from hitting the train track. I near strangled him for taking my life into his stupid hands, left him to change his flat alone, and clambered into our friend's car. Beers in hand, seething, idiot, don't mess with trains. Story 34, coworker of mine started doing crystal meth, went from a very promising career to rock bottom in 17 days, lost his wife, kid, and job. Now he's homeless and stealing anything and everything. Now, obviously this wasn't overnight, but eventually his habit tore him to pieces. Our best guess was he started using at least 4 months prior to getting fired. Story 35, working on Manas AB in Kyrgyzstan. A contractor showed up to the network shop and on his first day got fired. He showed up and asked where the snack room was, got very upset when he was told there isn't a snack room. Well, Google has a snack room. Dude, you're on a military base in the middle of nowhere. Walk literally next door to the chow hall and grab a candy bar if you need one. About an hour later, he asked where the nap room was. Again, got very upset when he was told there isn't a nap room. So upset that he started throwing around, and we had to call security forces. He was forcibly removed from the base and banned by the commander his first day. I can't even imagine how hard that destroyed his IT career, since the company had to fly him home the day after they flew him in. No one was going to hire that guy after that. Story 36, 2 of my childhood friends, who were sisters, got pregnant intentionally. One was 16, the other was 14, ruined both their lives. The oldest was offered many modeling career contracts, but her husband threatened to leave her if she accepted. The other one was just batshit crazy and, as I hear now, has 2 kids with a third on the way. I haven't spoken to either since meeting their firstborns. It was a harsh wake-up call when I saw how broken their mother was, as she broke herself daily to make sure her kids could go to school and aimed to be better that she was. Part of that also heightened my fear of relationships, and in general, I can't stand feeling trapped, and am in no way comfortable with the idea of intimacy. A large part of me appreciates those fears I have, even if I'm a bit lonely. Story 37, sweetest, kindest 32-year-old woman I've ever met who's in the top 5 list of fun people in my 62-year life. Got messed up with tramadol, dozed off while driving, hit and seriously injured another driver, and let her lesbian lover that she broke off her engagement to back into her life. Nothing but drama. And then lover dumped her by marrying somebody else. She had some pre-existing issues, but could stand some personal decision-making skills. Story 38, this guy got dumped, got a new job abroad, got pissed, attacked flight crew, lost his passport, got sacked and deported. Story 39, this dude got hired to work with us. He had all sorts of scabs and just had that look to him. Everyone knew he had a problem with meth. His excuse was he was a prospector and has scabs all the over himself from rocks hitting him. Anyways, he opened up to me one day at lunch about how he's trying to get everything back on track. His wife is hooked on Oxy. Most of his money went toward that cause she was hopelessly hooked. For about 4 months, he was doing great. His skin cleared up. He got some color on his face. He was sort of a different person. One day, we go to lunch at Waffle House, and while we're eating, this thuggish-looking dude approaches us and offers us some meth. Sorry for having to drop the classiest sentence of all time on you like that. I'm like, no, but my coworker is like, let me get your number. Next day, no call, no show. Never heard from him again. A month or so later, a coworker comes in. He saw the dude begging on a street corner and took a pic. Story 40, guy at one of my early corporate jobs was a really good employee and was up for a promotion that would have come with a huge pay raise, like $20K up in the salary. Started coming in late to work, though. Turns out he secretly was addicted to alcohol, pills, and cocaine and had a bad relapse. Did not get the promotion and performance slipped. He got fired and heard through the grapevine he went on a bender for a few months before getting evicted from his apartment. Haven't heard about him in over 10 years, but in the span of a few weeks his addiction cost him everything. Don't do hard drugs, kids. Story 41 watched someone join the military and within a year got married to his GF of 4 months. Been with him 2 years, had a daughter and twin sons. He hates his wife, but they have kids together. He's home now, but he is miserable and she is miserable and the babies are happy, but only because the daughter is 2 and the twins are 1. Give it a few years, and I'm sure the kids will be miserable too. The worst part is that his parents were together for far too long, and he knows the toll it can have on the kids, but he wants to be just like his dad, even though the dad says his biggest mistake was waiting so long to divorce the mother. Story 42, a few cheerleaders from my school made a brutal diss track in their school cheer uniforms, and it went viral locally. The 5 of them got expelled, and basically everyone in the state really doesn't like him. Story 43, my dad, one day, waking up and deciding to walk out on my mom because she didn't love him enough. He hasn't held a job in over 15 years now, and my mom paid for everything for him. He's also diabetic and has a lot of physical mental health issues. He didn't tell my mom that he was leaving either. Just packed his stuff and left while she was at work. I had to tell her when she got off work. He went from having a nice home to living in his brother's basement. Miserable ASF. Story 44, kid who graduated high school the year after me robbed the local McDonald's at gunpoint with some other guy. We live in a smallish town, about 9,000 people, so it didn't take long at all for them to be caught. He was only about 17, 18. He was in prison for around 4 years while I did my undergrad. He was in prison, so I think about that long. He was doing a program where he got time off of his sentence for working in a factory-type setting, some kind of deal about hours worked turning into time served. He was very close to getting out when he went out to a car with a female CO, got caught having with her. His sentence got extended by quite a bit, and now she's in prison, too. Story 45, a friend of mine was a D1 wrestler on a full scholarship. He sprained his ankle and got 30 Vicodin, and it was game over from there. Dropped out of college, got hooked on heroin and overdosed, and died a year after he sprained his ankle. Story 46, high school football player has full ride offers from multiple schools including OU, OSU, UT, and Alabama. Second to the last game of the regular season, he gets into an argument with the strength coach over the radio station playing in the weight room and ends up hitting the coach with his helmet. Expelled from school and had all of his offers rescinded. Story 47, this was like 20 years ago, and I forget where it happened, but I read about a substitute teacher who went into the classroom one morning and just started fondling kids right out in the open, like 3rd graders. Of course, he was arrested immediately and locked up for eons. I just had to wonder, what makes someone get up in the morning and while they're getting dressed, look in the mirror and decide, yep, this is it, today's the day, I irrevocably it all away. Just gonna punch out of society here real quick. Story 48, worked at a casino in my hometown in high school. Saw a guy in there fairly regularly playing slots, and he was super nice all the time. However, I came to find out that he had a great job, 2 kids and a wife, but he lost it all because of his gambling addiction. He had nothing left after his wife left him, and he spent the little he did have on slots. Really sad. Don't gamble, folks. Story 49, my dad murdered a young girl when I was about 3 months old in a town of less than 3,000 people today. Growing up sucked. High school sucked. Getting a job and own was impossible. Even had a few parents tell me explicitly that I could not date their daughters. 25 years later, there's still a stigma, but I live there to show all of them up. He ruined his life and indirectly very nearly ruined mine. I'd give anything to have had any amount of reasonable opportunities and guidance growing up. Edit for the record. My grandmother says he had been diagnosed with a form of schizophrenia when he was 12-ish. Here is a link to his confession for anyone wanting to read it. Second edit, my stepdad was convicted of capital murder. Is 2011. He, his brother, and a friend of theirs killed an older man in his family because he had bought them as children from their mother after he stopped paying them hush money. Story 50, I used to work at summer camp, and I was friends with this guy who worked at the rock climbing area. This guy was really chill, super friendly, skilled at his job, all-around cool guy to work with. Turns out he kept about 200 tabs of LSD in his mini fridge's freezer and sold them around the staff, but never really advertised it. I'm not a super judgmental guy, so I was pretty live and let live about it. That was until he sold to some pretty underage campers. Next day, DEA came and arrested him and his buddy, who also ended up having a ton of LSD. Last I heard, he was in the Fed serving 20 to life. Moral of the story, don't sell LSD to 16-year-olds, kids. Story 51, I've seen several things on social media where someone ranted very rudely about people or gave much less than respectful response to people on social media and then got fired as a result. That, in turn, gives you a reputation that other employers tend to find and, consequently, make sure you don't get hired at their businesses either. Basically, don't be in, or at least don't be one online. Story 52, an acquaintance realized some strange things were going on with her finances. Found out her husband discovered gambling and got hardcore addicted very quickly. Maxed out all their loans and credit cards. Reopened and maxed out a dormant joint business account from a decade earlier. Hubby even stole their son's summer job money. Everything she owned was gone. Story 53, a recovering heroin addict I knew had been clean for 8 months. She relapsed and lost a relationship. The place she was staying would have been permanent if she stayed clean, and her kids all in one day. Story 54, friend at uni during third-year engineering, smart, doing great, starting smoking weed, and it became his life. Plenty of others in the group used weed, but barely affected. This guy became the poster child for anti-weed ads, stopped turning up to class, and failed everything. Stopped socializing except to beg for money or take from another stash, then basically disappeared within 6 months. Story 55, a group of teenage boys and one girl stabbing a school friend and ending up in prison for men. 22 years at the ages of 16 and 17. What a total waste of life over a petty school squabble. Story 56, my primary school teacher, really good at his job, made learning fun, engaged with the students. Definitely someone I looked up to. Now he's in jail. Turns out he was a pedophile. Story 57, there were a couple of people who my sister went to school with that tried to do drugs. Either they were doing it at school or on school property because they were expelled. This wouldn't be very bad, but it happened about 3 weeks before they were going to graduate. Apparently, it was bad enough that they were not allowed into any schools in the state, I believe. Story 58, heard a story from a colleague I worked with. He went to a party with some of his friends where they drank heavily and later got bored. So they decided to go for a walk. While walking, they saw a road construction completely empty because it was a nighttime and there were some machines that were used to lay the road. They checked the doors of each one of them and found one loader which was unlocked and had keys inside. They decided to go for a ride with it and drove 20 kilometers to the nearest town where they went to the beach and ended up drowning it. The next morning, police found and arrested all of them. They all went on to serve some time in prison later. Story 59, a first-year teacher who was late on the first day of school by at least 30 minutes. His response was, but I was early to all the staff days last week. We knew in the days before school started that he was going to struggle as a first-year teacher. This was the biggest of the nails in that coffin, though. Story 60, no, a former sober dude that used to do drugs. He had one shot of liquor 2 days later, had nothing, meth casino, and police were involved. That's why I don't do drugs, folks. WTF. Story 61, we don't know yet if it's going to ruin his life in the long run. But I had a friend a while ago that was messing around in the 100 feet away from a barn, putting on fire with gasoline just for the of it. He ended up putting out most of the fire, except a tiny one that he did not see. Next thing you know, 30 minutes later, the fire grows huge due to the fact that it was an extremely hot and dry day, and the wind was blowing in the exact right direction. The barn burned down, which was a part of our city's heritage and had an old military Jeep in it. He is still waiting on a trial. He is turning 18 in a few months, and if they don't sentence him soon enough, he might have to be charged as an adult. P.S. If he would have took virtually any other day to do it, he probably would have been fine. During this season, the weather is cold AF, and everything is damp as like 90 of the time. Story 62, the guy on Reddit who randomly tried heroin and quickly became hooked just to do an AMA. Story 63, friend of a friend was 18, pretty rich, went out with one of the hottest chicks in the district. He was the first to get a high-power motorcycle in the neighborhood at our age. She really digged that. One night, he is hooning down a 60 km/h road with his girlfriend on the back. No helmets, it's a 2-lane road, and there's a car ahead of him. He decides to overtake the car on the inside, even though that car is also on the inside lane. He is so close to making it until a drunk driver pulls out in front of him and doesn't stop the car in time. That car oversteps the boundary by enough to block his path. The car on the left serves and avoids the collision. But the biker and his girlfriend hit the nose of that drunk driver at close to 110 km/h, according to forensic report. Girl dies instantly. Guy dies hours later on the street. They were buried next to each other 7 days afterwards. Both families were devastated. Drunk driver faced no charges other than the drink driving charge. Story 64, cousin having a kid, then having another when she clearly didn't want the first one. If you have a kid in your teens and expect to go out and party every night, then I have big news for you. Story 65, heroin. My sister went from a normal 20-year-old with a stable job and fiancé to a cracked-out 22-year-old who has been in jail 6 times in the past year and a half, had a baby while in jail, and now has 7 felonies. She is out and working on putting herself back together for her daughter, but it is near impossible with 7 felonies and a 9-month-old. All because she met another boy and decided she wanted to run around and have fun before being married. She thought she was too young to settle down, I bet she regrets that decision now.